Thank you very much, Eris, and I'm very happy to be here today, this afternoon. So welcome to all of you to this presentation on asset management, trading, and the FinTech impact on those two sectors. And my name, as you heard, is Susanne Chishti. I'm the founder and CEO of FinTech Circle. And maybe I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So I started to work in FinTech actually 20 years ago, which sounds quite extraordinarily because nobody knew the term FinTech then. And it wasn't until I think 2-3 years ago when we learned and used the term FinTech. But at that time I worked in the Silicon Valley after studying there in business school and worked for a tech company which sold its service to all the stock markets in the world. So we were a FinTech company, but we of course didn't know that because we were just a normal technology player, selling into capital markets, into the stock markets. And then I went back to Austria. I'm Austrian originally, to Vienna, and worked for Accenture. And then came to London 20 years ago to implement software solutions for banks. So we implemented back office systems to front office systems, from Gloss to Bloomberg. I literally was coding myself C++, which I still remember, doing those programs, configuring systems. So really started out more on the tech side. And then I moved to Morgan Stanley and moved into banking. And then the last 15 years I spent working in the banking side, first within asset management for 7 years at Morgan Stanley as a vice president. And my focus there was really looking at expanding our asset management business in Europe and then also in Asia. And then I moved to Lloyd's, focusing on transaction banking, and also then to Deutsche Bank. And last year when I worked for Deutsche, it was really interesting because it was a time in London where people talked about FinTech. It was very much, everybody wanted to be part of FinTech. I had lots of colleagues of mine who said they would like to invest in FinTech companies because they knew finance, they knew technology, and they wanted to be having an exposure and being invested in those startups. And at the same time, I knew lots of FinTech startups who said they want to have access to smart money. And they didn't want anybody's cash, but they wanted smart money, smart investors. And that was the birth of FinTech Circle, which is Europe's first angel network focused on FinTech. So that's the first box on the top right, our angel network. And our goal is to bring together the best FinTech investors with the best FinTech startups. And we organize educational events as well. Secondly, what we realized when we talked about this circle was that lots of established players, banks, large banks, everybody tries to identify what can we do in FinTech, how can we engage with the ecosystem, with the startups. And so our focus is here to advise large established players how to take advantage of the FinTech revolution and how to pick out those startups which are most relevant, how to invest in startups, how to work in the ecosystem, which is so important. The third brand you see here is FinTech Tours. And the FinTech Tours, this came about because I often was invited to speak at FinTech events in other countries. And afterwards, lots of entrepreneurs from outside the UK came to me and said, so how can we tap into the UK customer base? How can we tap into the UK investors? And the same questions came up again. And so we're organizing now 2-day tours for startups to come to London and really deep dive into the FinTech ecosystem and getting to know all those players they need to know. And the last one is the FinTech book, which is coming out, published by Wiley next year in February. And I will tell you a little bit more about it in a few minutes. So who are we? FinTech Circle, our focus is to search for the best FinTech startups. And the reason why that's important is because we see quite well what's coming up. Because normally startups, after doing their first round of investing, after the family and friends round, they normally then go out to search and raise the first external seed round. And that's where we come in. Our focus is raising up to £500,000. And we looked at about 150 startups, which we analyzed, which we did due diligence on. And we introduced to our investors the top always the top startups in each round, which are the top 6 in each round. So about 24 startups so far we presented to our investors. And our focus is both London, we're London-based, but we've got a global outlook. And what we also wanted to do is to reach out to the global community. So we have set up on LinkedIn, a LinkedIn group, and you all are very much invited to join because it's the largest FinTech network globally, totally free of charge. And it's a forum where you can learn about FinTech, where you can contribute as well as active discussion members and participants. And it's a really nice global forum on LinkedIn. And we also have been chosen just last month as one of the top 16 FinTech brands, which we're very happy about, by a global media company, which did a research on all the Twitter feeds in the ecosystem. So now moving on to FinTech overall. I think probably all of you, you hear about FinTech every single day, but often it helps to get a helicopter view of what it really means and what are the subsectors within FinTech. And I wanted to recommend you one study which has been done by the World Economic Forum, a very independent study. And I think it's the best study which there is outside, which is really available online. You can Google it free of charge. It's called The Future of Financial Services. And this study segments FinTech, the global FinTech sector, in 6 sub-sectors, one of which is investment management, asset management. And what it does is, well, it analyzes the various business models and looks at the disruptive elements in each sector, which helps if you want to get a top-down helicopter overview what goes on in the industry. And for our presentation today, we want to deep dive into the asset management sector, into the investment management field. And here we've got 2 large disruptive trends, which we can see. One is about the empowering of investors via social trading, via robo-advisory, and also algorithmic trading. And the second focus is about process externalization. So those are these disruptive elements which really impact asset management today. And the first one, process externalization, focuses on advanced analytics. We heard today about examples about machine learning, advanced data, big data analytics. It's about capability sharing, cloud-based computing, and also open source ID. So often concepts which are new to large, institutions and new to players who have maybe so far gone a more proprietary focus, now realize they want to open up and almost want to add to their existing customer base. Because if you think about a private bank whose customers might be, ultra high net worth individuals who so far have not yet adopted technology as a distribution channel, but equally the new generation which will inherit their wealth, they want to have different ways of engagement. And so what we see often is that the private banks, they have to do this, double kind of a strategy, which is on one side servicing your existing customer base, but at the same time looking at what the future brings and how can they embrace, FinTech innovation. So I wanted to share with you now a couple of examples, 4 case studies of 4 FinTech companies which we looked at more detail. The first 2 give you a case study on the asset management, FinTech solutions. The second one on 2 case studies on trading. This one, Elger Dynamics, is a company which came to us probably in December last year. They applied to our angel network for funding. And at that stage, there was a group of a team, a Cambridge-based team, and the founder and the senior management team all were graduates from Cambridge, super intelligent team, and all big data analytics experts. And basically what they had developed was something which I initially thought was too good to be true, because it was about the ability to, based on real-time analytic feeds, to analyze when a down event happens in the market. And if you know, of course, when those anomalies in the financial markets take place, and if you can predict those a few hours, a few days ahead of time, you've got then the option to hedge your positions to protect your portfolio. And I thought back to my days at Morgan Stanley, when we worked in asset management, and all our portfolio managers, their goal was to generate alpha and outperformance versus the index. And if you didn't generate alpha over a certain period of time, probably your customers replaced you with passive funds or with ETFs. So your career was at risk if you couldn't generate sufficient alpha. And then we met this company which was able to predict down days, and therefore being able to increase your outperformance to lower volatility and increase risk-adjusted returns. So we really liked them, and they were later on chosen by the UK British Angel Association as one of the most disruptive tech investments. So we invested as well in Elger Dynamics in our angel network. And their focus is on small, up to 2 billion AUM in size fund managers who want to buy those solutions to be able to predict, as part of the portfolio risk management solutions, to predict those down days. But equally, their other goal, their second tier strategy, is to focus on the top banks and tier 1, tier 2 investment banks and help them for credit line monitoring and mitigation of systematic risk. So a very interesting case study there, spin-off from Cambridge, and a fintech company now which is based in Cambridge and in London.